In January 1975, a 19-year-old photographer entered the frozen wilderness of Crater Lake National Park and never returned. Almost 2 years later, searchers made a discovery so disturbing that it still haunts investigators today. Resting near a fallen log were a pair of jeans. Inside the socks were only the bones of his feet. The rest of his skeleton had vanished. No boots, no jacket, no camera, no clear explanation. One ranger who witnessed the scene later described it with words no one forgot. It looked like he just melted. And that impossible image is what makes this case so chilling. Crater Lake, located in Oregon's Cascade Mountains, is one of the most mysterious landscapes in America. Its water glows an unnatural deep blue, filling the crater of an ancient volcano that violently collapsed around 7,700 years ago. Over time, snowmelt and rain created the deepest lake in the United States. But long before tourists ever arrived, native tribes treated this land with fear and respect. For generations, stories warned of enormous, silent figures moving through the trees, creatures that appeared without sound, then disappeared just as quickly. Massive tracks were said to appear in places no person should be able to reach. Even modern hikers have reported strange sounds at night, the feeling of being watched, and unexplained prints in fresh snow. This was the place Charles McCuller chose to explore. Known as Chuck, he wasn't reckless or inexperienced. He was tall, athletic, and trained for survival in harsh wilderness. He carried proper cold weather gear, emergency shelter, food, and a sleeping bag rated for extreme temperatures. He knew how to navigate snow, read terrain, and survive dangerous conditions. More importantly, Chuck was careful. Before every trip, he left detailed plans with his family, where he was going, when he would return, and who to call if something went wrong. He also checked in regularly by phone. This wasn't someone who simply disappeared by accident. Chuck had been staying with a friend in Eugene, Oregon. His plan was simple: travel south, reach Crater Lake, spend 2 days photographing the winter landscape, then return by January 31st. Before leaving, he gave one final instruction. "If I'm not back by February 1st, call the police." On January 29, 1975, Charles McCuller boarded a bus. It would be the last normal day of his life. The final confirmed sightings of Charles McCuller only deepened the mystery. On January 29th, he was seen at a small roadside store called Dry Creek, roughly halfway between Roseburg and Crater Lake. Someone had apparently given him a ride there, but that person never came forward. Despite years of media coverage and investigations, no driver was ever identified. The next morning, January 30th, a logging truck driver picked up a young hitchhiker along the North Umpqua Highway. The man said he was from Virginia and heading to Crater Lake to take photographs. He was carrying a camera and wearing a down jacket. It was Chuck. The driver dropped him near Stump Lake, about 20 miles from the park entrance. Snow along the roadside was already several feet deep. The weather was clear. Chuck was last seen walking east toward the wilderness. That was the final confirmed sighting of him alive. The most likely stop along that route was Diamond Lake Lodge, one of the only open locations nearby during winter. Later, an employee reportedly remembered a young man arriving late one night and asking how far it was around the lake. Many believe that man was Chuck, but no official record was ever produced. Then came silence. No campsite, no footprints, no trail through the snow. It was as if Charles McCuller had simply vanished. When he failed to return by February 1st, exactly as he had warned, his friend contacted police. What followed became one of the largest search efforts in the history of Crater Lake National Park. Teams searched on foot, on skis, and by snowmobile. Aircraft equipped with infrared technology scanned the frozen terrain from above. Rescue crews spread across roads, trails, and remote sections of forest. They found nothing. Not a single footprint, not one piece of gear. No camera, no sign that Chuck had ever been there. His father refused to give up. He searched by air and on the ground in brutal conditions, trying to find anything investigators missed. But every concern he raised was met with the same response. "There is no evidence of foul play." His answer was sharp and unforgettable. "Of course there isn't, because you never looked." Then, after months of searching, officials ended the operation. The case went cold. For 18 long months, there was nothing. No clues, no body, no answers. Until October 14, 1976, two hikers from Texas were traveling through a remote western section of Crater Lake National Park near a creek few people ever visited. They stepped off the trail and found an old weathered backpack lying in the wilderness. Inside were keys. One of them matched a Volkswagen key connected to Chuck's missing person file. Rangers were immediately sent to the location. What they found next would turn an already strange disappearance into one of the most disturbing wilderness mysteries in America. Near the junction of a remote creek draped over a fallen log, searchers found a pair of jeans. Despite nearly 2 years of exposure to snow, rain, and harsh weather, the jeans were still in surprisingly good condition. The belt was undone. The button was open. Underneath them were socks. And inside those socks were the bones of Chuck's feet. A short distance away, investigators located a skull, a jawbone, and part of a leg. That was all. No boots, no jacket, no wallet, no knife, no sleeping bag, no camera. Most of his skeleton was simply missing. It wasn't scattered nearby. It wasn't buried. It hadn't been dragged into any visible area. It was just gone. One ranger later described the scene in chilling words. It looked like he had been standing there and melted straight down into his clothes. Officials quickly ruled the death as exposure to the elements. Case closed, but almost nothing about the evidence made sense. Start with the location. Chuck's remains were found deep inside one of the most remote sections of the park, far from roads and trails. During the winter, he disappeared. Snow in that area had reached heights taller than Chuck himself in some places. Park officials had previously stated that without skis or snowshoes, reaching that area on foot would have been nearly impossible. Chuck had neither. During the original search, investigators believed he could not have gone more than a mile or two into the park. Yet his remains were discovered many miles farther inside. Then there was the condition of the body. His jeans survived almost 2 years outdoors, but most of his bones were missing. Experts and searchers struggled to explain how only certain remains were present, while the rest had vanished without a trace. And then there was the camera. Chuck entered the wilderness carrying it. It was never found. No film, no bag, no photographs, nothing. His father believed someone harmed him, stole his belongings, and moved the body into the remote area later. He spent years pushing for a deeper investigation, convinced the truth had been ignored. Others looked at local legends. For generations, stories around Crater Lake spoke of large, silent figures moving through the forests, strange tracks in fresh snow, unexplained encounters in places few people ever go. Some connected Chuck's case to those reports. Others suggested something even stranger: mysterious lights seen over the lake, missing time stories, and wilderness encounters with no logical explanation. But none of these theories have ever been proven. Officially, Charles McCuller died from exposure. Unofficially, the case has never made sense. A prepared young man entered the park with survival gear and a camera. He vanished without leaving tracks. Nearly 2 years later, only fragments of him were found in a place many say he could not have reached alone. And whatever he may have photographed that frozen night in January 1975 has never been seen by anyone. So what really happened to Charles McCuller? A human crime? A tragic accident? Or something in those ancient forests that was never meant to be discovered? This case may be closed on paper, but in the shadows of Crater Lake, the mystery is still alive.